Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome into the Back to 12 podcast. I'm RC Maxfield. You know him, and we just gave him a bag. The people here at the Back to 12 podcast, we gave him a bag to stay here because, well, we know what the people want. And of course, I'm talking about Lyle Jr. Lyle, how you doing today, man?
Oh man, blessed to be in your presence. I got to be honest with the people. I actually had to pay a bag to stay on, so
Oh,
that's not a problem. Borrowed some money from a couple of my good friends, Coach Riley and Coach Kittley. So I paid it back to the Back to 12 podcast, but I'm definitely blessed to be here.
yeah, no, yeah, there was a lot of talks about NIL money and everything like that, but in the end, we came to an agreement because we know what the people want and they want to hear Lyle talk and me just, hopefully navigate us in the right direction. But on today's podcast, we're going to talk about Texas Tech football recruiting, how they landed a 4-star running back last night, if you're listening to this on Friday, January 13th. And then also we'll talk about Texas Tech coordinator talks, as there are some rumors that, well, a guy that Lyle just mentioned and Tim DeRuyter will be getting contract extensions for the Red Raiders. We've also got a new wide receiver coach because, well, again, we gave Lyle the bag. He's still here. And then we'll just talk about really kind of what all went down with this, what we can expect from Jerald Bradley, and then two big additions. Well, one big addition to the Texas Tech defense in a major returnee. But Lyle, let's just start on the recruiting front. Texas Tech, they added a 4-star running back last night, Johann Cardenes from the Houston area. Crazy enough, right now, I know it's still early on in the process, and Lord knows you know way better than I do that it's really early in the class of 2024 cycle, but they're sixth right now in the country, the sixth best recruiting class in the country. Do I think it finishes there? No, but it's on the right track. You got 3 4-star commits in Cardenas. You've also got that 6'6" wide receiver from up in the Panhandle, and then you got Lubbock's own offensive lineman right there in Holton. I I know it's early, Lyle, but like just from a looking at it from a distance standpoint, obviously it's nice to be sixth, but also I think it's nice to just see that, I guess, continued momentum on the recruiting trail from last year, because let's face it, sometimes there's going to be ebbs and flows into this with where Texas Tech is at. But with this 8-5, it seems like it's at least staying the same, if not in the upward trajectory on the recruiting trail.
Yeah, no doubt. I think everyone knows the culture is changing. A lot of people want to be a part of that culture. They tore down the back of the end zone. They're doing big things. So it's a lot of great things that people want to be a part of. But I think from my point of view, my perspective, I think the biggest thing too, though, is how well do these guys perform? That's one of those deals. I'm not a big star person, never have been, although I think it's awesome. Kids see six in the country and they want to come be a part. They want to join that. So it helps in a lot of aspects. But just from dating back to when we played, I think Leach was so good at finding guys that maybe weren't quite 4 stars, maybe not quite 3 stars, but they performed and performed like they were 4 stars. So I think for me, that's the biggest thing. How good it's cool to be a good recruiter. You have to be that in this day and age. But at the same time, how good are you at evaluating talent is a thing. And I think, a lot of times with Wells, he didn't have top classes. But at the same time, I think he did a pretty good job of evaluating talent because his class did a pretty good job at 8-5 this year. So I hope that we don't get caught up at a Tech going for stars. Because like I said, when I worked at West Virginia, I saw 4 stars that weren't that good. I saw a 5-star that wasn't that good. And I saw 3 stars that were freaking awesome and 2 stars that were awesome. So I think there's a crazy stat too in the NFL. There's more 2 stars and 3 stars in the NFL than there is 4 or 5 stars. So like I said, it's great to see us on that 6, but I hope we're evaluating talent, to the best of our ability. And I think they are. And I think it's kind of proof in the pudding with the kids that were already there, not being successful, being able to use those same kids and turn around, put them in different spots to be successful. So I'm excited to see what they're doing, but I can't remember the last time Tech's been in the top 10 in recruiting, probably never. And back-to-back years at that, because they came in last year, we were top 10. So they're doing, it's kudos to them on their hard work, but at the end of the day, I hope we're able to evaluate those guys and not pass up on some guys that may not have the stars, but are able to show up and show out.
Yeah, I think it's definitely that fine line, right? Like stars in the grand scheme of things they're kind of like the cherry on the top, right? Like are you just going to eat the cherry by itself in terms of like the sundae, right? Or are you actually going to eat some of the ice cream too? And that's, how good of a football player are they? Do they have a good football IQ? What are their intangibles, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so obviously you want the coaches in place, and that's the thing. I think Texas Tech has the coaches in place to get these guys that even if they do have 4 or 5 stars to where they need to be, but also the guys that maybe are those diamonds in the rough, quote unquote, to go out and really prove why they were going after them, whether that's the speed measurables, the intangible measurables. There's so many things that you can look at. I think from Texas Tech's point of view, what they focus on, it's mainly speed, as we know, but they're also super productive in high school, the guys that they go after. And I think that that's something that's super interesting to me is like, yeah, you should probably target guys that are super productive in high school, but that's not necessarily what it is all the time. Like I'm right there with you. I've seen 4 or 5 star guys where I'm like, yeah, you're a good football player. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like, I don't think you're better than this, 2-star guy that's opposite of you. Like you just
Mm-hmm.
might have 3 or 4 more inches of height on you. Like, and that's really what I think people need to realize on the recruiting trail too. Recruiting is about projecting, right? That's what it is more than anything. Like if you're thinking about bringing that player in that's like that right now, you have recruiting misunderstood. Recruiting is, okay, I see what you are now, but how good do I have the pieces in place as a program that my projection is right on you, where I think you can go from A to B in terms of talent and what you can do with it, right? That's really what recruiting is. And I think you got the guys in place that can help guys get there. And speaking of those guys, Kittley and DeRuyter, there's rumors going around right now that each of them will be receiving a contract extension. I don't think that should be a surprise to anybody. I would suspect that it's probably in that 3 to 4 year range for those guys, and they are going to get a bag. They're going to get a bag, a handsome one at that. And I thought it was cool. I heard Joey McGuire after he got his contract extension. By the way, he did not know that contract extension was coming on the day of the bowl game. He basically said, like, yeah, I want this extension. But the next words out of his mouth were, hey, we need to get Kittley an extension. We need to get DeRuyter an extension, so on and so forth down the line, right? He understands the whole process of this. And I think that a lot of coaches don't. So that's a good sign there. And I've heard that, and I mean, he's one of your good friends, so you probably maybe know better than me, Lyle, but I've heard that Kittley was sought after by 2 ACC schools, a couple of SEC schools. Really only one was going after him really hard, and then one Pac-12 school as well. But Kittley turned them all down, and instead he'll still be at Texas Tech. And I don't think that can go understated. And I wanted to ask you this, Lyle. How big of a deal is it that you have your coordinators in place for back-to-back years and you have that continuity with those guys? Because, again, I understand like position coaches are probably more important in the grand scheme of things because, listen, let's face it, you're a wide receiver. You were spending the most time with your wide receiver coach. That's how it goes, right? Actually, you're probably spending the most time with the strength staff, if we're being honest, because the NCAA rules. But anyway, you spend on the coaching side more time with your coaches. But how big of a deal is it for Texas Tech to have their coordinators coming back for a second year and really building upon that success that they had last year?
I think it's vital. I think a lot of kids, and a lot of people might be offended when I say this, but I'm gonna say it anyway, because that's what we're here for, to tell the real. But I think some of these kids, and even the case of Link, a lot of these kids are no longer going to the university for the university, and Texas Tech is not,
Facts.
Texas Tech is not top of the line. People, like, there's no greater university in the world, but it's not a top-notch football school. So you got kids coming in to play for Coach Kittley, to play for Coach McGuire, to play for Coach DeRuyter. So it's key. You know, the fact that you know, Kittley turned down some of those jobs shows number one, maturity. You know, he probably feels, hey, I need to sit back and take a year or two more to understand, number one, because like I said, you know, taking this job is a lot that I thought I knew I did not know. You know, learn on the go. The difference is I'm not in the SEC, so learning on the go in the SEC and learning on the go Texas high school football is a little bit different.
A little
So
bit, a little bit.
I think he, you know, that shows a sign of maturity, and two, I think it shows a sign of loyalty. He wanted to be there. His father works there, one of the greatest dudes I know. His family's there. I mean, it's a perfect setup and situation for him. And you know, I think him and Coach DeRuyter want to see it through. I'm sure some people reached out to Coach DeRuyter too,
They did, yeah.
as far as head coaching. I'm sure they reached out. I know for sure DC they reached out because Texas Tech has not been good on the defensive side in a very long time. So I know he got love from a lot of different places that have been struggling on that defensive side. So it shows loyalty. It shows how much they believe in this program and Coach McGuire to stay. Because like I said, it's crazy, and people get mad at these kids for transferring, but in reality, coaches transfer every year too. You know what I'm saying? Coach Jones just left to take a higher deal on a team that we were better than. So, you know, we gotta, as fans and people, we gotta realize and be easy on these kids. You know, and I tell these fans all the time, if you at your job, don't you leave your job if you get a job promotion. I ain't never heard no one turn down a lot of money and say, "Oh, I'm going to be loyal to this." So we can't get it twisted on that side of it, but I think that just goes to show the loyalty of and the things that Coach McGuire is doing and how he gets people to want to stay. I mean, even in the transfer portal, we had some kids transfer, but I've also seen other schools where 20 kids transferred. So
Yeah.
it's a part of it, but I think we had bare minimum people transferring, and you know, no disrespect to those student athletes, but at the same time, those ones transferring, I didn't see them really helping us out anyway. You know,
Yeah,
maybe in the
except for
long run.
Reggie. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
except for Reggie Pearson, like, and again, that's no disrespect to those guys. Like, I think you hit the nail on the head with the maturity aspect from Zach Kittley. I think he learned from Cliff Kingsbury in terms of, let's be real about it. From Cliff's standpoint, he moved up the ladder too fast.
Yes.
Like he just did. And he'd be probably the first one to tell you that in terms of like, hey, I was in over my head. Because he went from co-offensive coordinator at Houston to winning a Heisman for Johnny Manziel. And then after 18 months of being the co-offensive coordinator at Houston, he was the head coach at Texas Tech. He probably moved too fast. But on the transfer portal side, you're right. Outside of Reggie Pearson, like I think these guys are just going to try to get bigger roles, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like I think people have to realize deep down, like, and first and foremost, you hit the nail on the head. Players do not commit to schools; they commit to coaches. It's that simple. Like that's 95% of the time. Now, sometimes there's a Baron Morton situation, right? Where Baron Morton obviously committed to Texas Tech because it was in his blood. He's been a Red Raider his whole life, right? Like that happens. But most of the time, like, for example, if I'm the wide receiver coach and I have a good relationship with Lyle, Lyle is committing to me, like not the name on the chest or anything like that, the logo on the helmet. And like, I don't think people want to hear that, but it's the truth. Like that's legitimately the truth. And I think that's empowered the transfer portal a little bit because you see guys, as you mentioned, coaches transfer every year. Coaches are moving every year. And when a player commits to a coach, what do you think the player's going to do?
Yeah, and I try to tell people that all the time. It's a you know it's a deal, like just like for those that make the NFL. Once you get cut, like I said, when I got cut, no one called me, no one checked on me. They sent me a box of stuff that I left there, and that's the end of it. So you got to take advantage of it. And you know, I don't know if people know this, but when I was playing at Tech, Julio Jones and AJ Green came to visit Texas Tech.
Yep, I remember this.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm sitting there on the sideline looking at 2 6'4" dudes and thinking, them two plus Crab, I'll never play here. You know what I'm saying? So I'm sitting there on the sideline looking at 2 6'4" dudes and thinking, them two plus Crab, I'll never play here. You And so to put it in perspective for you people listening out there, I was telling my kids today working out, you work out 315 days for a funky 10 games. That's it. And you work out year round. So for those of y'all that don't know the schedule, these kids didn't get Christmas or New Year's because they had a bowl game. So they missed out on that. They come back in January, they get a week or two off. They come back because school's already started.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't get that time with their mom. They come back, they work out, get 2 weeks off in the summer. That's it. 2 weeks. If you want to get your paycheck. And I'm gonna let you know the way, I mean, it's different now. They get NIL deals. They're probably rich and don't need
They
it.
still
But
get the stipend.
yeah,
And there's
we
still
had to
stipend
be
involved.
there to get our little 1,200. So you didn't miss. So understand these dudes are working year round. So I understand the same aspect because if I'm playing and Julio and AJ came, I've been gone. There's no way I could have sat there for
It's
3 years
logical.
and watch them go. There's no way.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no, and again, like obviously every circumstance is different, and I sometimes don't like the transfer portal, but I also do like it because um it's kind of, almost in a way like you would do the same thing at your
Exactly.
job. Like
Exactly.
just because they're playing football doesn't mean that they're not human. And I think people forget that sometimes. And I'll be honest, I forget it sometimes too, watching the NFL on Sundays. But it's just like, oh yeah, those dudes have, they're not just fantasy players for me. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you got to rethink this a little bit. And speaking of rethinking, Texas Tech rethought the wide receiver position and the coach that will be coaching them as Emmitt Jones left for Oklahoma. You mentioned it a little earlier, but Lyle, we were talking before we started recording, and I like this hire a lot. I think it's an upgrade. I really do. Now, how much of an upgrade you can say yourself. Everybody has an opinion, and that's fine. But I like it from the standpoint of where he's a good recruiter at, if that makes sense, because I think Texas Tech was very heavy in the DFW area, and rightfully so. DFW is loaded with talent. Don't get me wrong. But Justin Juice Johnson, for those that don't know, was the wide receiver coach at Kansas for a little bit and the RB coach at Baylor, but he's from the Houston area. And I think that that's a big deal for Texas Tech in terms of recruiting. And you kind of already saw it last night. I mentioned that 4-star running back that they got, and that's because of the relationship with Juice Johnson. But Lyle, when you first heard about the hire, what was your initial reaction? Because again, it would have been you, quote unquote, insert an apostrophe or whatever it's called, an asterisk, sarcasm. But we threw a bag at you, bro, and that's why you're here.
Hey, no doubt. He's just blessed to pay my dues so I can continue with my brother here. So I just told my wife and kids we have to lay off to McDonald's for a couple of days until we pay our money back, so I could continue
There
the
you go.
pod. But I thought it was a good hire, honestly. He's a young guy. He's well recruited. He's a very good recruiter, which we need. Like you said, the area, and I think they're kind of targeting that area. Because, like I said, I think that's the part we talked about a long time ago for those listening. We talked about how it's hard to get to Dallas, and I'll be the first one to tell you, and I still say Lubbock is not easy to recruit to, and I'll say that till I leave this earth. But they got people in place that know people that are from there that do that. With Blanchard, him, so I think they're targeting those areas that they know that they need, and they got those people that they can get to where they need to get to, talk to people they need to talk to get those kids to
Yep.
kind of commit here. So I think it's a great job on that. I want to see, my biggest thing, we talked about it before is just, I want to see his ability. I think that he's really going to have to be able to coach these receivers. I think we have good receivers. But like I said, I don't think that they were coached to the best of their ability, in my opinion. And so, I think we're going to get some guys. And the thing is, you get a really good recruiter, you don't have to coach them because they're good and they coach themselves. So I think that's one thing that he can bring and get a guy that may not need as much coaching. But as of right now, we got guys that I feel need to be coached. And there's a couple small things that you learn as you play the game. And you don't necessarily have to play the game too. be clear about that. Coach Leach is one of the best to do it. Never played the game. So, but I think that's what we need. And we talked about as an offense. I think the most important positions, it depends on what kind of offense you're running. If you're a power eye offense, I think a running back coach is pretty important. So,
Yep.
I think he's going to do a fantastic job. I think the kids are going to like him. I think the fans are going to like him. I think he's going to do a great job, but I hope he's able to kind of get some of the receivers that we have and mold them, because I think they could be really good. I actually hit up Bradley and told him I thought he did a pretty good job. And I told him I was hard on you, man. I've been hard on you, but I think you could be a really good receiver. And I'm
It's
excited
all
to see
there,
it.
man. It's
And
all
I'm
there
rooting
with him.
for you. Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, no, I think again, and you hit the nail on the head as well. And I feel like I said that 7 times. It sounds like a white dad when I do it, but it's fine. Like, if you get talent in here, like most of the time it's going to take care of itself. Now, not every time, because again, it goes back to that notion that we talked about earlier. Stars don't always tell the case. You got to put in work and everything like that. But I think, again, you look at what Texas Tech is targeting in the class of 2024, and the guy that really stands out to me that they're going hard after at the wide receiver position is Micah Hudson. I don't know if you've heard about this kid, Lyle, but he is the 6th overall player in the class of 2024. And I truly believe in On3. They reported this as well. There will be 3 schools for sure in his top 5. 3. Ohio State, Texas, and your alma mater and my alma mater.
Wow.
Those will be in there. And I think, again, I'm not saying he's going to come here because, let's face it, if I'm in his position, Ohio State, it gets you to the pros. You know what I'm saying? Like, it almost secures your spot in the pros. I mean, you think about the wide receivers they've had there. But that being said, he's a Texas kid. He might want to stay here. And I think that this is where a guy like Juice really can impact it. This kid is from the lower Texas area. I forget exactly where he's from. He's from Lake Belton. Isn't that like right outside of Houston, that area?
Belton, I think that's closer to
Is that
I think
Austin?
that's Austin, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm not good. I'll be honest with you. Once you get past Waco, I am not good with anything south in terms
There's
of like,
nothing good in Austin. I could assure you that.
oh, okay. Well, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, again, now, is he an anomaly? Sure. But I think you're going to see Texas Tech really go after these guys now with some of this success. And it's key that you have the on-field success, right? You can't just go into a 5-star recruit's house, a top 10 player in the country, without a connection, like a legacy or anything like that, and be like, hey, look what we're doing on the field, and you're 5-7. It's not going to work, right? You got to build those genuine connections. You have to have on-field results, and you have to show kind of what you're doing. And I think that getting a guy like Juice in terms of having that connection down in South Texas is pivotal, because there's not a lot of guys on this staff right now for Texas Tech that have that big-time Houston connection. Because you think about it, Joey McGuire, obviously he's got DFW wrapped up. Really, I mean, he knows everybody in the state of Texas. Coach Perry, excuse me, he knows DFW as well, right? You've got a bunch of guys that know DFW. I think that's an underrated aspect of this. Like, and that's not to say that guys on the staff don't have relationships with guys down in Houston or anything like that. But to have a guy from there, knows the area like the back of his hand, can say, hey, look what I did on the field down there. Like, he's one of the best receivers that Houston has ever had. And that's not like a, hyperbole or anything like that. Like, it's the truth. Go look what he did as a senior. By the way, you probably know his co-offensive coordinator his senior year. Do you know him?
What's his name?
I don't know. Just Cliff Kingsbury.
Oh, everybody ain't able.
Yeah, there you go.
Hey.
So obviously Johnson, he has ties to Texas Tech, but it's through a coach, right? So that doesn't mean anything in terms of, hey, he's going to be here for the rest of his life, because let's face it, he's not. But I think he brings a different factor to this in terms of what Emmitt Jones brought. And this is not a knock on Emmitt or anything like that. It's not. But I like coaches, Lyle, that coached various and multiple positions at the college level, right? He's coached wide receivers and he's coached running backs, and now he's in charge of the passing game. And my first initial reaction was, well, he's been a running back coach. He's been a wide receiver coach. I think that makes it easier for him and Kittley to sit down. And you know this, when you're the passing game coordinator, you sit down with the offensive coordinator, try and scheme those things out for the game and everything in terms of, hey, I really like this idea. And I think it's a good thing that Juice has that ability to not only think as the passing game coordinator, but also put himself in the shoes of the running back coach and think, okay, if they're doing this against us, I think this could open up the run game. And what does that run game opening up do for the passing game? And it's that trickle down effect, and him being able to think in multiple ways, I think benefits Texas Tech offensively.
Yeah, I'm a little different in that aspect, honestly.
Really?
And that's just from coaching and being around it. There's a lot of coaches that don't know that position. And
Sure.
so I think you miss out on a lot of stuff, because it's different aspects. Like if you really know running backs or you really know receivers, it's a totally different thing. And not to say that you can't be successful in teaching that, but there's ins and outs that I know from playing the game and knowing. And like I said, there's kids that I've coached that I've helped because I've been there, done it. And also working with someone like Kittley, it's a different aspect from a receiver turning back to a quarterback looking out. And that's why a lot of high schools struggle with choice routes, because to a quarterback, he looks open. To a receiver, I don't look open. So I think those are the small things that, I think if you can recruit and get a guy that's done it his whole life, he knows it. He knows what he's saying. Because sometimes as a receiver, when I was at West Virginia, he's a really good recruiter. He's at North Carolina right now, but he played quarterback. So he didn't know the receiver stuff.
Sure.
So sometimes he get mad at the kids, and I'm like, nah, it looks a little different when you're in their shoes. So I'm telling you, that's not how it looks. You may see that and you may say, oh man, it was open, or he should have, but it's different when you're in that shoe. So I different in that. And then secondly, I think the game has changed. I think when it comes to recruiting, relationships are important, but honestly, I don't think there's that important anymore because of NIL deals. That young man's gonna go whoever pays him the highest, he's
Sure.
gonna go. I would love to go to Ohio State and guarantee me a spot at in the NFL. But if Texas Tech offered me $5 million, I'm gonna go take $5 million and still maybe have an opportunity to do that. So I think the NIL has changed the game as far as relationships. You do have to have them, but I think relationships are more for when kids get there, and when they get there, that's how you keep them with the relationship. But getting them there is now kind of turned into, what can you do for me?
Sure.
How much
Well,
do I
because you
do?
got to recruit these kids not just once, you have to recruit them damn near every day with the
Right.
portal.
And that's where I think that relationship comes in on that second part, because kids in the portal, it's a little different for them because there's so many kids in the portal. All of them are not going to have to take money. They're not going to
Sure.
say, what can you do for me? There's some kids like, just get me in and let me show you what I can do.
No
So I
doubt.
think the game has changed because of that, as far as, relationships and even like Quinn, Ewers, I think that he liked Texas Tech better. I think that Texas paid him more money, so he went to Texas. You know what I'm saying? So I love, those connects. It's still important to get to know kids, to have those connects in Dallas. Like, I think you're right on, but I think that doesn't do enough anymore with the times that we're in. I mean, if we want to recruit that number one receiver, Cody Campbell better come through. And he's the number one recruiter. That's who it is.
Well, sure. Yeah. I mean,
You
that's why
know,
Womble and guys like that are so important right now.
right. And I just think that's the name of the game now. So to me, I just see it a little different. I think I think they're valuable without a doubt. But I think when you can get a guy that knows the ins and outs, and then you get a guy like that, I think that's valuable, because you're going to get kids if you have people that are donating, giving that money.
Sure.
Now, what are you turning them into? That's up to you. So I think if this is 10 years ago, I think relationships, that's it. I went to Texas Tech. Well, I went to Texas Tech because that's all I had. To be honest, I'm not gonna lie.
Same.
But
They gave me a scholarship too.
you
Obviously
know,
not like yours, but yeah.
but the relationship I had with them is why I would have went there anyway, because
Hmm.
we had that relationship. But I'm not gonna lie and say, if I was in high school and Texas, offered me 10 mil or 5 mil, we wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation, brother. I ain't gonna lie to you. Would have had the
Understand.
orange on. So I think that, what is Texas Tech going to do? What are our alum going to do? What is the school going to do? Determines. I think we're doing a good job with the NIL, giving them 25K. By the way, Kirby, you owe me 100 G's. And then, yeah, I think that's the difference.
Yeah, residuals, of course, right?
Yeah,
That's how that works. Yeah,
give me
absolutely.
my money.
There you go. Yeah, no, I think it's interesting. And by no means am I saying Texas Tech is going to get Micah Hudson, but I do think it's a guy to definitely monitor for the Red Raiders. And I think that Juice has a good relationship with him already. So I think it's definitely a guy to monitor. And it's not only just Juice doing that. I think that when you look at it, before we move on, I think that don't underestimate how powerful social media is when it comes to recruiting and everything like that. Like, don't get it twisted. There's some people out there that think, oh, the recruit will never see this. You're wrong. You're wrong. Because I promise you this, the guys that you think have no egos, they still search themselves on Twitter.
Oh, yeah,
I promise.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Because they do it. I'll randomly get a recruit or a Texas Tech player liking a tweet from like 6 months ago because you know why? They search their name.
Yeah,
it happens. And but I do want to move on to the defenses. We got about 6 minutes left here, Lyle. This might be a bold take, but I think the Texas Tech defense is going to be a top 3 defense in the Big 12 next year. They bring back 8 starters, and one of them is Josiah Pierre. He announced that he will be coming back. That is pivotal for the Red Raiders. I mean, he is an underrated pass rusher off the edge. I think he didn't get as much shine, and rightfully so to some degree, because Tyree Wilson was just so damn good this year. But I think you got a guy in the portal that went really under the radar that no one is talking about enough, that I think that people don't realize that he is going to be a starter next year. And I feel pretty confident saying that. And that's Steve Linton. He's a Georgia guy, went to high school in Georgia, but went to college up at Syracuse, played for the Orange. He's got 2 years of eligibility left. His stats aren't going to wow you, right? He had 6 tackles for loss last year, 3.5 sacks, but I think he was vastly underutilized by the Orange. And I think he could be the guy that comes in and plays opposite of Josiah Pierre and plugs into that Tyree Wilson role. Now, by no means am I saying he is going to be Tyree Wilson. I do not think that's fair to anybody because Tyree Wilson is a top 8 pick in the NFL draft. It's just, you can't think logically like that, right? But he's 6'5", he's 225. I actually wrote in my notes, Lyle, that he's 2,225 pounds. That is not accurate. But he's 225, comes off the edge. He's an impact guy. He's got bend with speed. And the guy that he reminds me of when watching the limited film I could see, and this is a name that Texas Tech fans will know well, played about 7-8 years ago for Texas Tech. He reminds me of a taller, lengthier Pete Robertson.
Oh, Pete.
That's who he reminds me of. Like, he kind of reminds me that Pete was that 6'3", about 215 guy. He could bully you, but he just had elite bend off the edge and didn't lose any of his speed when he was bending, right? That's kind of what Linton reminds me of. And I think he can play right away. I love the combination of Linton coming in, being the starter, and not just having to throw that 4-star defensive end, Isaiah Crawford, into the fire right away. Because I think you can interchange those guys and kind of use Crawford almost in a relief type role of Linton. And I think you could have a lethal combination off the end, man. But I know it's early. I know it's January 13th. We're 9 months away from even the first game action. But when you return 8 starters defensively, you go out and you get impact guys, not only in the high school ranks, but through the portal. Tim DeRuyter's got a bunch, man. He's got a really good crew next year. And I think Texas Tech takes a monumental leap forward defensively right now, because don't forget CJ Baskerville. I think people are going to forget about him in that secondary. Do not do it. The San Diego State transfer, he's going to start next year, and he is good. He's long range. He's 6'3", 215, runs a 4.4, can go down in the box and absolutely lay the wood with his shoulder. So I'm excited about the defense, man. I think they're going to be really good.
Oh, yeah, me too. I mean, I'm excited about everything they're doing. Like I said, they putting in the work, and I think it'll work it out. I think, the biggest thing for us is just, we got to roll with the flow for a time or two.
Yep.
Of course, we've got high expectations, but, I've seen some tweets, people saying national championship, let's calm down a little bit, and just allow them to work. I think that's a possibility in the future.
Yeah.
But it's gonna be a tough road, and no telling what they're doing as far as expanding those playoffs. So they expand the playoffs. You got some teams going out. I mean, it's
Yeah.
looking good. We're on the come up with, and not that I think Texas and OU are all that, because they're not. But replacing those guys with BYU, Cincinnati, those are super winnable games of everybody. Houston, those are super winnable games. So
Yeah. Next year's going to be fun.
yeah, so I'm excited to see, maybe get that first Big 12 championship out the way. Still some tough teams, but like I said, I think it's way more manageable, adding these teams and taking a couple teams out. So hopefully we'll use it to our advantage, and I think they will.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. We'll wrap it up on that note. A lot of positivity around Texas Tech football again.
Mm-hmm.
I'd expect Kittley and DeRuyter, their contract extensions to be announced here really relatively soon.
Let's go,
Don't
kid.
know exactly the figures or anything like that, but they're going to be staying at Texas Tech. You got a good new wide receiver coach that's young and knows
Sir.
Houston very well. And damn it, the defense is absolutely stacked still. But Lyle, tell the people where they can follow you on Twitter.
Hey, before y'all follow me on Twitter, all I know is Kit, let me hold $1. But you can follow me at Twitter at Coach LLEONG, and you can follow my main man at
RCMB323. And by the way, little did you know, it wasn't originally Everybody Hates Chris. It was Everybody Hates Lyle on that front with that reference. But don't shoot the messenger. It was just the truth. He's Lyle. I'm RC, reminding you one more time for the latest breaking news when it comes to Texas Tech athletics. You know what to do. Hit that subscribe button to stay in the know right here on the Back to 12 podcast channel.